welcome again. This is very informal. I've never really moderated a panel before, but so forgive me. My name's Sarah Ferguson. Usually I'm sitting out there taking notes as a journalist, but I was really honored and touched for Theresa to ask me to bring some women together to talk about the issues that have come, forced upon us, more pressing than ever with the Trump administration. And I, like many of you, went on one of the women's marches, and we made history, woo-woo, and we all gathered. But I feel like there's been some real need for follow-up and for exchange of information and dialogue and strategizing amongst ourselves. So this event is actually the second salon that Theresa's organized of artists responding to Trump, the second group show, and the second panel. And this one is called My Body, My Country, My Earth. And so I've collected a really amazing group of women. I'm just going to be the referee here, and I'm going to let them talk and tell us their stories and, give the information that they've been working on. I'm going to introduce people. And again, thanks so much for coming out. So on my left here, first we're going to start off with Caroline. How do you pronounce your last name?
Caroline Sacerdotal.
Sacerdotal. I was going to get that wrong.
That's okay. Everyone does.
Okay. So she is a legal fellow at the Center for Reproductive Rights, which is headquartered here in NYC. And she assists with all aspects of the center's U.S. litigation, helping argue and prepare cases. Or do you argue them?
Not yet. I've only been practicing for a year and a half, so it's a little early for that.
Well, helping with the cases involving our reproductive rights, and she previously worked as a Ford Fellow for Lambda Legal's HIV project and has her degree from Harvard Law. And she's going to provide us with a much-needed overview of what's at stake with the Trump administration in terms of reproductive rights, including things like with regard to the status of Roe v. Wade and the defunding of Planned Parenthood. I'll let her tell it. And state attacks on access to abortion. And then, I don't know, we didn't really set an order. I think we're going to go to Fran, because Fran is, should I do all the intros now or one at a time as we go? Okay, I'm going to summarize. Fran is a...
I'm the producer host of Joy of Resistance, a feminist radio show on WBAI.
And a longtime community activist and agitator and proud feminist. And she has been tracking a lot of this stuff so she can help give us an overview of where we stand, because I am really, frankly, confused. What is going on with choice? What is going on with our rights? And you guys can shoot it out. Maybe we'll close with the heart.
Sure.
Is that good? So, because Melissa's here, I met Melissa coming home from the Women's March in Washington, and I was really struck by some of the work that she's doing. Did I lose my paper? She is founder and CEO of Advance Project Media, which is a not-profit that offers writing and travel services to teens and women around the world. And she's also a freelance journalist who has been published in the Washington Post and the BBC, among others, and a consultant who works with nonprofits globally. And she's offered to talk to us about her recent work empowering teen girls in Cameroon so that they can share their stories about a practice known as breast ironing. And she's also worked with teens and women in Peru and Guadeloupe. So she's going to show us some of the images and talk about what she's doing there. And finalmente, my friend Rossi here. This is Chef Rossi, and she is the author of the hit memoir, The Raging Skillet, which was published by Feminist Press in 2015, right? And which is soon to be a hit movie and a play, right? Because it's it's already been adapted into a play, her memoir, that's going to be staged this summer at the Theater Works in Hartford, Connecticut. And that's very exciting, so congratulations. And the book draws from her role as the owner and executive chef of the Raging Skillet, which is a cutting-edge catering company known for breaking any and all rules, and called the a new breed of rebel anti-caterer by the New York Times.
I like that one.
So besides that day job, Rossi also is a food writer of the Eat Me column for Bust magazine. And she has her own radio show on WOMR and WFMR in Cape Cod called, what is it, Bite This?
Like this.
Right. And now a new radio show, right, that you're doing, which is called Mouthing Off. And I don't know what transformative radio is, but it's on transformative radio. You're going to tell us anyway. So she's done many things, and she's going to talk about what Rossi talks about.
I'm gonna kvetch.
You're going to kvetch. Okay, she's going to kvetch. So that's it. And I'm Sarah Ferguson. I've been a journalist in this neighborhood since 1987. My feminist chops are going to build a school with a group of women in Nicaragua in 1987. I think I was very young. Got profoundly alienated. And so for me, this whole process of coming back and doing stuff with the Women's March and panels like this is kind of a homecoming to feminism for me. So thank you. And thank you for being part of that. Let's go. Let's start.
Good introduction.
I hope so. So anyway, Caroline, you were gonna talk about recent cases that CCR is involved in.
Sure. So as Sarah said, I'm with the Center for Reproductive Rights. Many people aren't familiar with us, but we are a legal advocacy nonprofit working both in the U.S. and globally to advocate for reproductive rights. And specifically, as Sarah said, I do U.S. litigation, so that's what I'm more familiar with. But so in talking about an overview of the reproductive rights situation under the new administration, I thought it would be helpful to frame it as some of the issues that we really hear people bringing up to us and that people are really worried about. So first off, the elephant in the room, questions about and concerns about Roe v. Wade being overturned. So people are understandably very nervous and very scared, and frankly, it does seem like this is one of the biggest threats to reproductive rights we've seen in this country. That being said, you know, Roe has been around for over 40 years, and it has really firmly established a constitutional right to choose whether and when to have children in this country. And that has been upheld on numerous occasions. Most recently, about 6 months ago, the Supreme Court reaffirmed the right to an abortion in Whole Woman's Health v. Hellerstedt, which was a center case. And in addition to reaffirming this right, it really kind of beefed up the standard that we use to evaluate restrictions on abortion. And all of that is kind of legal jargony, but it's important because it's helpful in guarding against something like Roe v. Wade being overturned. It's helpful in fighting against these regulations we see just like proliferating throughout the country. So while people are understandably worried, as I said, we are fighting. We believe that Roe, is established law that shouldn't be overturned. Generations of women have come of age under Roe. We now know that the right to an abortion is essential for people's ability to participate equally in society. And we have rule of law on our side. Like I said, Whole Women's Health. Within the legal context, the Supreme Court really isn't supposed to change their mind on important legal decisions just because justices change. And so we really have good arguments on our side, for keeping Roe in place and for making sure that doesn't happen. So in addition to that, as Sarah mentioned, people are worried about defunding. So this is talk about defunding of Planned Parenthood and also about reproductive health care centers generally. So often the center represents independent abortion providers. And so the defunding efforts really vary, and we're seeing lots of different permutations of them. Some of them are Planned Parenthood specific. Some of them are more general. So for example, last week, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but last week the Trump administration revoked Obama-era protections that basically kept states from being able to exclude reproductive health care providers from receiving Title X funding, which is huge. That's family service funding that goes, across the states, based on political preferences. So basically, some states want to be able to exclude Planned Parenthood and other providers who provide abortions from receiving this funding, which would be hugely problematic. Obama created laws to preclude that from happening, and those were just revoked. So again, it's still very early. We don't know how states are going to respond to this, but this is something that activists are monitoring, and we feel like we have good legal arguments for addressing some of these, and so it's something that we're going to be fighting for. And then two more quick things. So the ACA generally, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, there's huge concerns about how changes to that are going to impact, reproductive rights, but also just healthcare generally. And frankly, it is scary. We don't know what it's going to look like. There's talk of restructuring the entire Medicaid program. Specifically, one of the things I've been looking at is how will this impact the contraception benefit. So we know that has been something that the Affordable Care Act has created and has been hugely beneficial. We see people using long-acting methods of birth control much more often now, and it's thought to be because those are typically more expensive, but now under the contraception mandate, you have access to things like that without...
You mean IUDs?
Right,
like
IUDs, yeah.
Okay.
As opposed to the pill, which, when there's no cost sharing, you don't have to contribute to that yourself, if that makes sense. But if this contraception benefit is taken away, then basically the issue gets kicked back to the states. And so we're going to go back to a world in which your access to contraception depends on where you live, depends on how you get your insurance, whether you have insurance